For decades, crop circles have been one of the world's strangest mysteries. Perfect geometric patterns appearing overnight, mathematical equations stretching hundreds of feet across fields, messages responding to humanity's attempts to contact extraterrestrial life. Some people believe these are evidence of extraterrestrials. Others think it's just a prank. And some people believe it proves CIA connections to a government disinformation campaign. So I researched them, and the evidence that we'll go through today will shock you. Crop circles have been around for hundreds of years, but it really began in modern society in 1966 with the Chorley UFO incident. An Australian farmer claimed to have seen a grey saucer rise from a swamp, leaving behind a circular nest in what became known as a UFO nest. This led to the police and the Australian Air Force investigating, but were unable to come to any conclusions and found no evidence of UFOs. Little did they know, this was just the beginning. Over the next few decades, the term crop circle would be coined, and thousands of sightings would occur across the world, becoming a global phenomenon. Cases in Canada led to the Department of National Defense investigating, along with the British and US militaries. They all tended to have similar details: flattened crops in fields nearby roads or dense population centers. A large majority have occurred in England, specifically near Wiltshire and Stonehenge, which are places that tend to have huge cereal fields, lots of tourism, lots of media attention, and already have a history of crop circles and UFO stories. Some produce simple shapes, while others are incredibly complex, even representing fractals and mathematical equations, such as pi. While the farmers tend to be outraged due to damage to their crops, local communities tend to be ecstatic, producing tourist attractions such as helicopter tours. But who, or what, is making them? One of the most famous and complex crop circles is known as the Julia set. It was spotted by a pilot near Stonehenge, and he had flown over just 1 hour before, and it wasn't there. It was 915 feet in length and included 151 precise circles in what is a perfect mathematical fractal. Guards at the nearby Stonehenge also reported not seeing anything or anyone in the field. And this isn't the only complex visual representation of mathematics that has appeared in crops. Astrophysicist Mike Reed decoded this crop circle and realized that it was a representation of the first 10 digits of pi, and was rounded up correctly. There's also the 300-foot visual representation of a complex math formula known as Euler's identity. And then, the Arecibo Message. This was an interstellar radio message shot out into space in 1974, carrying information about humanity and the Earth. The original message was created by a group of scientists that included Frank Drake, the author of the Drake equation, and Carl Sagan. The message consists of 7 parts: the numbers 1 through 10, the atomic numbers of elements that make up human DNA, the formulas for chemical compounds, a visual representation of DNA, the appearance of a human and the Earth's population, which was around 4 billion at the time, the solar system with Earth rays to indicate life, and a graphic of the satellite that sent the message. It was sent to the Great Hercules cluster 25,000 light years from Earth, so we'd expect a minimum of 50,000 years before any response could be received. But we got one, only 27 years later. This is known as the Arecibo response, and first showed up in Hampshire. The image is an exact replica of the original message, matching the 23 by 73 grid. Most of the information is the exact same, except silicon is added as a core element of their DNA, along with the DNA structure being a triple helix. They included what appears to be the typical alien with a large head, and notated 3 different planets in their solar system as having life. The original telescope is replaced by a replica of a crop circle that appeared in the same field 1 year before. And if you've never noticed, it's also the banner for this YouTube channel. There are also claims that there's scientific evidence that proves crop circles are not man-made. The BLT Research group is made up of geologists, chemists, mineralogists, and physicists, most with masters and doctorates. Their focus is the discovery and scientific documentation of changes in the plants and soil at crop circle sites, and to publish these results in peer-reviewed scientific journals. Through their research, they've found some interesting commonalities in what they claim are genuine crop circles, such as plant stems bending at the base and continuing to grow sideways, while human-made crop circles would snap, break, and kill the crop, and has been seen to do so in proven hoaxes. Even in crops such as canola and rapeseed that are known to break when mechanically flattened, such as by a board, they are found bent, not broken. They've found alterations to the growth rate in the crops. Younger crops have reduced growth and smaller seeds, while fully matured crops had increased growth and increased tolerance, where they needed less sun and water for longer periods. And they even observed a 172% increase in growth in one crop circle. Expulsion cavities were also seen, where the crop's internal moisture was converted to steam when met with intense temperature and energy, and result in the crop to pop. This was replicated in scientific labs, along with the reduced growth in young crops and increased growth in mature crops, which led to a 25 to 35% yield increase. And they have 3 different published research papers. Plus, some genuine crop circles lead to what are called ghost formations, where the crop can be harvested, even new crops planted, and the shape is still visible for months or even years. And some videos talk about rumored military and CIA involvement. Operation Blackbird was carried out in Wiltshire, England, known as one of the crop circle hotspots. This was an investigation into the creation of crop circles and an attempt to document one being created, and included well-known cereologist Pat Delgado. And only on day 2, a crop circle appeared. Everyone was excited, and Delgado was pushed in front of cameras to tell the news, before he had even had a chance to review it himself, and upon reviewing it later in the day, realized the creation was very crude, an obvious hoax, and left an astrology board game in the middle of the circle, poking fun at the entire phenomenon.
When the Operation Blackbird team got here, they immediately recognized signs of a hoax. Wheat had been broken and soil had been trodden on, and most obviously, these had been left in the center of every circle.
This blew up in the media. The narrative immediately became that experienced cereologists couldn't tell when a crop circle was a clear hoax.
Coordinated hoax.
It's funny for about 60 seconds, and then I find it very, very sad.
But crop circle believers weren't yet quite convinced. They pointed to the fact that the entire event reeked of a disinformation campaign. The land was directly connected to land owned by the British military. The researchers were forced to talk about the circle before reviewing it. The props seemed to be there to maximize embarrassment. The operation was supposed to be surveilled by military men with night vision goggles who were missing that night. And because journalist Jim Schnabel was involved with the operation. He was an American journalist living in Britain during the crop circle boom and wrote for major newspapers about them and began creating them himself. He was also known to blackmail and on multiple occasions was secretly recording conversations. He would purposely misquote people to help further drive the divide on the entire crop circle phenomenon. Schnabel also appears in the CIA database plenty of times, further connecting him to intelligence agencies, and what crop circle believers used as undeniable proof that it's all a psyop. Plus, intelligence agencies view journalists as the perfect tool to spread disinformation because people talk to journalists and people listen to journalists. Just think of basically any journalist you've heard in the UFO space. George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, Ross Coulthart, they all have accusations of being connected with the intelligence community. And this journalist-CIA connection has been proven before with Project Mockingbird, where hundreds of journalists were exposed as CIA operatives, with the New York Times alone having over 10, and something that has never been fully declassified and therefore leaving us unable to know the full extent of the controlled disinformation. And if there really was an effort to shape the public narrative around crop circles, did intelligence agencies need to create a fake explanation, or did one already exist? Because while believers were pointing to UFOs and even government cover-ups, two retired men from England stepped forward with a groundbreaking story. Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley claimed they had been secretly making crop circles for years. They came out in 1991 stating they had made crop circles for over a decade, dating back to 1978, which matches the explosion of crop circles in the 1980s and 90s. They claimed over 200 hoaxes, and that they got their inspiration from the original 1966 Chorley UFO incident, which led to an explosion of copycats.
I said, why don't we put a circular depression in this cornfield, the same as they had out in Australia? I said, the UFO Society here, which was at its height at the time, Warminster especially, I said, they would probably think that it is a UFO that had landed.
They used wood planks, rope, and a baseball cap full of a loop of wire to help them make straight lines. Some videos point out that their story doesn't seem trustworthy because they claimed to pole vault into the fields to not leave footprints. But that's not accurate. They would use a ladder bridge, which is the exact same thing shown here by the group that won the crop circle competition in 1992. And they described it as a pole vaulting technique, not that they would actually pole vault. To prove they were hoaxers, they made a crop circle directly in front of journalists and brought along an unaware Siriologist who declared it as authentic before they revealed it was man-made. In 1992, there was even an international crop circle making competition, with the winners using rope, PVC pipe, wood planks, string, and step ladders. They would use the step ladders as a way to not leave footprints, which destroyed the narrative from some crop circle believers that they would point to as a way that you could tell it wasn't man-made if there weren't any footprints. And by the way, that journalist Jim Schnabel was in that competition and got second place. But what about how he shows up in CIA archives? Well, that's because the government frequently archives newspapers. Since he's a journalist, his name will be involved quite a bit. It's not that there's a bunch of actual CIA documents discussing him. It's just because they archived some of his work when they've looked into crop circles in the past. There's also a website known as the Circle Makers. They list out some of the crop circles that they've pulled off, how you can do it too, and have quite a good list of accolades. The rock band Korn had them create a crop circle for them to perform in. Nike had them make a giant foot for an ad. They were hired to make the Olympic rings to enhance the chances of Paris's Olympic bid to be accepted. A cereal brand had them create a logo for them to use on their box. I could go on, but I'm sure you get the point. They completely destroyed the narrative that complex crop circles could not be man-made. Additionally, the Discovery Channel funded a group of MIT students to make one for a documentary that they were producing. A son and father duo created a Star Wars symbol. And the Juliet set. Crop circle makers claimed that they knew who actually made this, and they could replicate it, and that it had been done the night before, that it wasn't true that the pilot had flown over 1 hour before, and that it wasn't there. Critics also point out that some of the strongest defenders of crop circles have built entire businesses around them. And this leads to people like Lucy Pringles. She runs a website claiming proof for crop circles and then has a link to merch to buy posters, postcards, calendars, puzzles, jewelry, or booking a helicopter tour. And how to pay her if you want her pictures of crop circles. And going back to Operation Blackbird. Despite videos claiming that the military funded and controlled the experiment, there is no verifiable information anywhere to prove this. And there's claims that Doug and Dave were paid by the intelligence community and had to sue because they only received half of their pay. But again, there's no verifiable information out there to back this up. No documentation, nothing else anywhere to prove this, other than people spouting conspiracies that it's true, but unable to provide any sort of verifiable information to back it up. And the BLT Foundation. Their website hasn't been updated since 2016. Their findings are also not accepted in the scientific community as valid, and despite having a team of close to 10 experts with masters and doctorates, only having 3 published papers is actually quite low. So where does all of this leave us? On one side, we have thousands of crop circles, reports of unusual lights, mathematical formations, and published research papers of anomalies in the plants and soil at some of the sites. On the other side, we have admitted hoaxers, crop circle making competitions, groups hired to create whatever designs brands come up with, and no actual pieces of evidence of any physical craft or extraterrestrial origin. Personally, after going through all of this research, I think humans are capable of making more complex structures than people give them credit for, but that doesn't automatically explain every crop circle ever reported. Nor does it mean that proven hoaxes automatically mean that they're all hoaxes. But I want to hear from you. Are crop circles one of the greatest hoaxes in human history? Or was it a disinformation campaign to make sure that no one knows the truth, even when it's right in front of you?